Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I'm your host tonight, and I have one other Infinity Bro with me. It's Infinity Bros Zayne.
Heyo, happy to be here. We're having fun. It's another Zayne and Isaac mess around.
Let's go. It's been Zayne and Isaac mess around for the past 7 episodes or something like that. I feel like we're setting a record for the same cast members on the Infinity Bros podcast for episodes in a row.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. How's your back doing? I know my back's starting to get a little sore carrying all this.
It's tiring, man. Just, supporting the Infinity Bros among all their other endeavors. Zayne and Isaac just keeping the show going, man.
That's right.
It's tough, but somebody's got to do it. So
someone has to do it. Keeping the flame alive.
Keeping the flame alive. There you go. Welcome. If you're a new listener, make sure you check out theinfinitybros.com for checking out all of our Infinity Bros links and needs. You can get some sweet merch there. Also, I haven't done this for a while, Zayne, but we have a lot of cool partners that we work with and stuff like that. So we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. I'm just going to mention those. So we work with this amazing coffee company called Many Worlds Tavern. If you use code The Infinity Bros, you can get a 10% discount on a bag of coffee. And for me and Jarrett, especially, Jarrett's the guy who dove headfirst into this partnership because he's the one drinking coffee at 9 p.m. when we're recording. So he's the one that's literally Many Worlds Tavern Coffee is keeping him going. But they're an awesome company, focused on gaming. I have this Many Worlds Tavern basically magic token that I got with my last bag of coffee that I ordered. And it's really cool. It gives you a little bit of info about the bag of coffee that you ordered. And then in the back, it's literally a magic token. This one currently is a knight with 2/2 vigilance. So pretty cool. And I've by force been getting into magic more and more with Jarrett and Robbie dragging the Infinity Bros podcast into Magic the Gathering content creation. So I'll probably be using it eventually, but just got to keep storing up those tokens. So check out Many Worlds Tavern, code The Infinity Bros for 10% off. Next one is one that Robbie got recently. It's Entertainment Earth, which is mostly kind of like a toy company. They have a lot of stuff on their website. So we'll have all of these links in the show notes as well, but you can get 10% off with code Infinity at Entertainment Earth. Robbie specifically has been promoting the Commander Precon decks that they have there, but they also have Funko Pops, which I feel like would be Robbie's jam to promote. Robbie's big Funko Pop guy. I believe he's got over 300, or he did at one point, Funko Pops in his collection. And I remember Zayne when he moved into his new house, or it's not new anymore, but the house that they're currently living in, he literally had totes of unboxed Funko Pops, totes full of Funko Pops that were unboxed. Boxed take up a lot of space, right? Unboxed, not so much, but he's literally got totes full of unboxed Funko Pops. Yeah. So yeah, he might need to go to Entertainment Earth and order some more at some point. So but yeah, code Infinity for 10% off. And then also we are currently working on a partnership with RIPT Apparel. We are currently at, I don't know if you call them ambassadors. We'll say partners, but Level of Hell, which is kind of like their base level, but we're working on improving that level so we can get you guys a code for 10% off or something like that for RIPT Apparel, because Zayne and I already promo RIPT Apparel even without being partnered with them. So we're hey, we should just partner with them, so then we can actually promote it and do something with it. But I'm currently wearing a RIPT shirt right now.
The Cage Fighter. That's awesome.
That's my favorite one right now. It's so fun.
It's so
but,
good.
Yeah, they have some amazing shirt designs that are combos of different areas of pop culture and nerd fandoms and stuff like that. Really awesome designs. And Zayne, you've how many RIPT Apparel shirts have you purchased over the years, Zayne? Just rough guesstimate.
Oh man,
he's ashamed right now.
It's got to be close to 100.
Wow.
I literally have a black garbage bag full of shirts that I just, because like they're from, I really need to go through it because they're from like my early days of buying ripped shirts.
Yeah, Zayne's an OG. Like Zayne
Yeah.
got on board before they hit it big.
And so like you can even just start going through the shirts and you can see all the different sections of the years of like all the times they've switched like their shirt maker and like who they get their product from. And
Yeah.
and like you can see the quality of the shirts change and everything through the years. But literally of all the old ones, because I think I bought my first ripped shirt in 2014 or 2015.
Wow.
But yeah,
Pretty fresh
all
out of
those,
college. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, no, legit. I have an entire trash bag full, like I said, that I need to go through. That's just ripped shirts.
We're going to be making some content based on that giant garbage bag of ripped
We
apparel
can
t-shirts
make
at some point. Yeah.
we can make plenty.
Yeah. So anyways, those are some of our partners that we wanted to shout out. You can always go to theinfinitybros.com to get linked up with any of those. And we'll have some links in the show notes as well for you guys to check out. So, all right, guys, we're going to dive into our episode here. We're going to talk about two big things. Number one is Loki. Just premiered a couple weeks ago. The third episode is dropping tonight as we speak, 10/19. We're currently not there yet, and we already had so much to talk about, so we were just like, you know what? Let's just we'll limit ourselves to 2 episodes of Loki on this episode, and then we'll recap another 2 episodes in the next one. So we are talking about Loki, and then we're going to be talking about the last episode of Ahsoka and kind of a season recap as well. So we do have a special rating system on the Infinity Bros podcast. We're going to tell you about that right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
And we're also going to be spoiling Loki and Ahsoka. If you haven't watched either of those shows, make sure you pause this episode, go do that right now, and then come back, and then you can listen to our review of it.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
So that was your official spoiler warning. We'll just say for Loki right now, because obviously we're going to talk about Ahsoka a little bit later. But Loki, season 1, a couple years ago now already, which is kind of wild to think about that we're already, several years removed from that first season. Just to recap, Zayne, what were your thoughts on season 1? Like, what would you rate season 1? And where does it scale on your list of like MCU TV shows?
That's a good question. Cause yeah, now like you said, it's like, yeah, it's been a couple years since I've watched that. Cause I was not the one to go back and watch through it like I probably should have. Especially just the nature of this show probably would have been really helpful. But
yeah, for real.
I guess without dropping on a straight rating, like I'd say it's definitely in the top of what we've had for MCU shows. If not the top. Just because the content, everything it dealt with, and really everything that was in it did so much to kind of set up what was coming with like phase 4, with everything with Kang. Like you really, they were like, that was the first show that you felt like, hey, this is going to really tie into the movies. And now granted, everything else has started to play out and you're just like, is this still what's happening? You got a bunch of real world stuff going on. With Jonathan Major, all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
yeah,
as far as like the implication stuff go, that season, like it was very well done. It was very like, yeah, you had the speculation, and of course, it's just the characters, the cast. It was a very fun show to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So like season 1 still gets high bidding to me. Yeah, like I said, it's top of the shows, if not the top. I guess I would have to kind of go through everything and kind of recollect, but it's definitely in the top of all of them.
Okay. I think I'm right there with you, and I actually did go back and rewatch Loki season 1 before season 2 dropped, and before my rewatch, I think I had it on number 2. and I had Moon Knight at number 1, and I really liked Moon Knight. I know a lot of people kind of had issues with the pacing and with a lot of different things in that show. And Loki, kind of similar. I think some people had issues with pacing season 1, but after going back and rewatching season 1 and like kind of knowing, the story and, knowing the direction the MCU is going, blah, 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 all that stuff, Loki's definitely my number 1 show now. Like, it definitely leapfrogged Moon Knight after my rewatch. I'd still give it a 5.5 out of 6, I think. I don't think it sits, like, if I were ranking movies and projects together, I don't think Loki cracks my top 5. It's not like 6 out of 6, like the best thing ever type of thing, but it might crack my top 10, like the very bottom of my top 10, like somewhere in that range. Like, it's solid. It's really good. And like you said, the cast, fantastic. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, phenomenal in season 1, and it continues in season 2. But anyways, like, yeah, I think season 1 was great. Personally, now after that rewatch, my favorite MCU show. So, and there's been so much stuff coming out too with like the MCU, kind of how they did these shows. I mean, we've been harping on them ever since WandaVision, honestly, with the format and like how they're trying to cram so much into like these 6 episode form, like show formats. And it came out that they didn't have TV showrunners. They just treated it like a big movie, which, is like, that is one way to do it, but obviously it didn't work for a lot of these shows. So it is interesting looking back at that now and being like, okay, I can appreciate Loki a lot more than some of these other Disney Plus shows that we've gotten. So it was just an interesting look back. And another thing is that Loki season 2 starts literally the second that season 1 stops. So that was another helpful thing to like go back and be like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get where we're at in the story. So, all right, let's go back. We're not going to go scene by scene because I feel like we just have too much to talk about. But it, like I said, it starts basically the second that the last season stops. Loki gets back to what he thinks is the main universe or the main TVA or whatever, and he races to go find Mobius, only to find that Mobius has no clue who he is. This was a pretty wild way to start out the episode. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because you're like, that's kind of what immediately came back since they picked it up, right from where season 1 ended. Because it was such a cliffhanger. You're like, what's going on? How is this going to get explained? And I thought the episode did a good job of like, it still carried that feeling of like, all right, we still don't know what's going on. Like, you didn't get like immediate resolution on it, and you still kind of had that panic, that confusion, trying to kind of get the gears going again. And then it kind of eased you along, kind of got it going of like, all right, you're figuring this out at the same pace as the characters in the show are figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a good job of that.
Yeah. And so we kind of go through the rest of that episode and into episode 2, and we're getting Loki time slipping, right? Like back and forth between time, apparently, in the TVA. But it's different because, like, so right away, how season 1 ends is Loki comes back to the TVA and he sees that giant like Kang statue, like in the library that he's in, right? So right off the bat, things are different. He goes back and forth between like the past and the future of the TVA or whatever, and he's finding that there are like differences. Like there's some of, I think, the main line or the sacred timeline or whatever, Kang stuff is not as prevalent. Like, I think it's still there, but like we find out, I believe it's in episode 2 where he like stabs the wall and it reveals like the mural or the Kang like head statues in that like judge room or whatever. So like something feels weird about this. Like, they say that he's time sleeping, going past, future. Just I don't know, man. Are you fully trusting what they're trying to lead us to believe right now, or does something feel off to this about you, to you about it?
I know better than to trust anything that's happening in this show,
Yeah, true.
because it's just like anytime, yeah, you're getting into anything with multiverse, anything with alternate timeline, because yeah, and now you're introducing the whole like, hey, this is the past, the future, like and you got so many moving pieces like that. You're just like, I don't know how you can hold your hat on anything, because like even if you feel like, you feel like you have an idea of what it's zeroed in on, they could easily flip it to something else, because again, you're still in the point of like, oh, timelines, oh, time travel, like it could easily be altered. So you're just like, all right, you think you might start to be comfortable of like, hey, this is what's going on, and then they could immediately just flip it another direction.
And you think we would have learned our lesson especially with us at the Infinity Bros podcast, going so deep into those WandaVision conspiracy
Right.
theories, and like just about every single one of them being busted.
They're
we
just
would learn our lesson by now, right?
they're just so much fun. I
It is
can't
fun.
help it.
Yeah, you're right. It is fun. It's fun to go deep into those. And I feel like now, well, me and you, I feel like we've never had a problem with this. It's that Mark and Max combo that it's like they just get so deep into the weeds. And when none of that turns out to be true, Max in particular gets a little upset by that. So I'm hoping Max learned his lesson by now, and we'll see. I know he's been enjoying Loki so far, but yeah, it's been phenomenal. I think one thing that's been really cool is the time slipping. Like we've had a lot of people talk about, oh, the CGI in these Marvel projects is not great, like blah blah blah. I feel like the time slipping that Loki's doing, it almost feels like the glitching in like Spider-Verse and stuff like that, but that looks phenomenal. I
Oh yeah.
don't have any issues with that, and so far CG has been incredible in this season of Loki, so zero complaints. I mean, do you feel the same way, Zane?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everything's actually looked really good, which I think was something that you definitely had to like kind of work on, because like that's been a big complaint, especially coming into like phase 4 and so much of other stuff you've seen, that a lot of people have been really knocking some of the visual effects on stuff. And I mean, I guess I don't know all the mechanics behind it or what may, the difference of stuff, but like it seems like what they're doing for this show is either if that's getting more of the budget, or they just got the good animators working on it. I don't know, because like yeah, the stuff looks good with him like glitching through stuff. I mean, even like when you go into that I don't the name is the next where the loom. That's
Oh, the
like
loom. Yeah. That
like
looks
that
great.
looks fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, man, and this is on a TV show.
Right.
And then you look at what we've gotten for some of the stuff in actual movies, and you're like, where was the ball dropped here?
And some of the other Disney Plus shows too. Like,
Oh, right, true.
I mean,
Yeah,
regardless on how you feel about Miss Marvel, like you watch that show and then compare it to Loki or any of the movies, it's like, man, it really does feel like they kind of just skimped on some of this stuff. And I don't know, man. It is refreshing coming back to Loki, where I feel like they are focused on, because I mean, this has got to be a central piece of the story moving forward, right? Because we got He Who Remains, his whole story starting in season 1, so they got to put their money here, because this is where it's at. If Loki and Jonathan Majors as Kang does not work, they might be screwed. I don't know,
right.
but we'll see how it all ends up playing out. But yeah, I have not had any problems with CG at all this season so far, and I'm not expecting that to be a problem moving forward.
Right.
In Loki especially. And anyways, so but yeah, I think one of the focuses that I want to talk about for both Loki episode 1 and 2 is Mobius and his relationship with Loki, because I think that was one of the highlights of season 1. Owen Wilson, I'm still so psych that we have him in the MCU. It's so
Oh yeah,
funny.
fantastic.
It's great. And all the stuff that we heard about him being in the MCU too, that he like never watched a Marvel movie before, and I don't know if any of that's true or if it was all just people talking and stuff, but like he doesn't care about the MCU. You know, like that's not what he's in it for. He's in it for like this role and playing this part that was given to him. And I think that's phenomenal. Like he plays that part so well. Him and Tom Hiddleston have just amazing chemistry. Like just
Yes.
give me like 4 seasons of buddy cop Owen Wilson
Right.
and Tom Hiddleston, and I'm fine with that. I don't
Well,
even care, man.
right. Even if you just get like 4 seasons, even just if you just went like episode of the week of them going into different timelines and
Yes.
solving mysteries, like
Oh my gosh,
that'd be fantastic. It would never get old.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, that would be phenomenal. But yeah, I think that continues to be an awesome part of season 2. And man, like I said it many times through season 1 when we were reviewing that, and after my rewatch too, Tom Hiddleston, like this guy is a phenomenal actor. Like he's the cream of the crop. Like now that we don't have, you know, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, you know, and we do technically still have Chris Hemsworth as Thor until he's officially, you know, done or whatever. But like, I feel like Tom Hiddleston's like the best actor in the MCU right now. Like he is so good. And even going back to like Avengers, like just how he was acting then and how he kind of still like he's evolving through Loki, you know, like he's kind of becoming softer, he's becoming less of a villain. But then you get that scene in episode 2 where he like starts boxing up Brad, and it's like, oh, this is villain Loki. We get villain Loki back again. All right. That was awesome. I was like, yes, all right, give me that. Because like despite everything that Loki's been through in these seasons, he's still a bad guy. I mean, they're trying to push really hard that like he's not a bad guy. He just made bad decisions, blah blah blah. But like he's the god of mischief. Like, you know, he's a bad guy. So I like that they kind of flash back to him being a bad guy in there, and you can still be a bad guy and save the universe. Yeah, I mean, you can be a bad guy if there's no universe to be a bad guy in. So
all that makes me think of is that scene from Wreck-It Ralph when they're having the bad guy meeting.
Yes.
It's like, just because you're a bad guy doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Like,
oh my gosh, that's
so Loki true. Somebody needs to make that. Draw that picture in there. Loki needs to be in there.
In the bad guys therapy group or whatever it's called. Oh yeah, so good. But yeah, I think their relationship is awesome. Okay. Now, moving on a little bit, I think this is beginning of episode 2. We finally, because episode 1, we only see a very, very short clip of Sylvie at the very end when basically Loki's trying to save, you know, the TVA and he's got to get pruned. That was a really wacky way to end that episode. That was wild. So he's got to get pruned, and he like goes back to, oh no, I think he's in the future, right? Yeah, he's in the future of the TVA, according to what they're saying. And he gets pruned, but as he's getting pruned, he opens the elevator and Sylvie's right there, and she's just like, oh, where have you been? Like she's been there all along. And it's like, that was the only shot we got of Sylvie the whole time. We're like, what? Where is Sylvie in this? Where is she? And then she shows up in the future, and we're like, oh, wow. What an ending to that episode.
Right.
So we finally show up in episode 2, and she's working at a McDonald's in 1982. And we actually had a ton of like promos with like old school McDonald's.
Yep.
Loki showing up at a McDonald's. So this was, I thought, a really cool setting. I love when they are calling back to these different time periods and stuff like that. This is why a buddy cop series with Owen Wilson and Loki would be fantastic. Just show them going to all these different like time periods and like just messing around with those timelines. Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. So we get Sylvie back again. What did you think of her reintroduction? And she eventually gets roped back into going back to the TVA. How do you think we get to that point at the end of episode 1 back again?
That's a great question. Like, I don't know if you felt this. I kind of had this feeling of watching, going from what we had at the end of 1, then into 2. I felt between those 2 episodes, it almost had a feeling it was a little disjointed. Like, I don't know why. It just felt like the episodes weren't connected together fluidly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt like season 1, or, it ended season 1. You had the premiere of season 2, and it just took off right from there.
Right. Yeah.
Everything kept going, great, all through that. And then you hit the end of episode 1, and then you get the start of season, episode 2, and it just felt like it didn't line up correctly.
Yeah, and I think I know where you're coming from, because the intro in this second season is actually when they're in Brad's like timeline or whatever,
right,
tracking him down. So that part was like, oh, what are we doing here?
Right, like well, because especially when you knew of the whole of Loki getting pruned, but then you also had the whole bit of at the end of season 1 of the other chick from the TVA when she was setting all those people out,
right? Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're just, I felt like there was too much like off-screen advancement, right. And I was just like,
yeah.
So it took me a little bit to kind of get seated on everything that was going on, because I was just like, that just felt like a little bit of a disjointing storytelling.
I agree. I think I enjoyed the premiere episode a little bit better than the second one for sure too. But what we did get in that first episode, carrying on to the second one, that we haven't talked about yet, is Ouroboros.
Ouroboros, yep.
Yeah, Ouroboros, which is gosh, I'm blanking on his name now. Ki-Hu Kwan.
Ki-Hu Kwan.
He comes back, I shouldn't say comes back. This is his introduction in the MCU, and then they call him OB, which I will henceforth refer to him as, because it's way easier than Ouroboros. So, but man, Ki-Hu Kwan is just a phenomenal entrant to the MCU. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed him in his role that he's in. He's so funny. He brings an awesome energy to episode 1 specifically. But like, anytime he shows up, I feel like I have joy in my heart when I see him on screen. So it's so fun to see him in this role. And I mentioned when that first episode aired, I was like, this could be our new Trinity in the MCU. We could have Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Owen Wilson as Mobius, and Ki-Hu Kwan as OB. Like, if that's the focus of the MCU moving forward, I'm okay with that. Oh, those guys were just so fun to watch in that first episode. What did you think of Ki-Hu Kwan?
Oh, yeah, just like everything you said. Like, it was a fantastic addition. Like, he's so fun to watch. Just everything, like, he does. Like, he just brings that energy that you're just like...
He brings that short round energy, man. Like,
right.
He like, you could go back to Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, and he still seems like he's the same kid. It's amazing.
It's just it's just got that joy, and like you just can't help but kind of smile, and he's just kind of that quirky, the way too smart to like, what are you doing here? Just it's fun. He stole every scene he's in.
Absolutely. He's so funny.
Yeah.
Have you watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, Zane?
Yes.
Okay, like,
fantastic.
And he came on, I don't know, I want to say he came on so strong, but he actually didn't in that movie. Like, he seemed like he was such a minor supporting role until like the very end, when he just becomes that guy who's pushing the main character, who I'm blanking on, to like do everything she's doing. And man, he's so inspirational in that movie. Like, it's again, and he plays the same role where, like, she kind of thinks like, he's kind of just lame and he's just lost it over the years type of thing. And he comes back at the end of that movie, and everything he says is just like pushing her to be better and do like the best thing she possibly can. Like, that was such an amazing movie. That was, I think, was that last year? Yeah, was that last year? I don't remember if it was last year, 2 years ago, but that was my number one movie of whatever year it came out, because it was fantastic. I love that movie so much. But yeah, he keeps the same energy. He's just like such a happy, positive person that it just like bleeds into his roles, I guess. But yeah, I think him as OB is probably my favorite thing about season 2 so far. And the fact that he's like been around for thousands of years at the TVA,
Right.
like that was a really cool part, was when Loki's time slipping. He time slips back to, they mentioned like 400 years ago or something like that. And he goes to OB and he's like, hey, I'm time slipping. And OB says the exact same thing that he does in the future.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, hey, help me make this thing so we can like figure this out. And then he makes it. And then 400 years later, he's like, oh, wait.
I got that. Yeah.
Actually, I do remember that.
That whole scene was brilliantly done.
Oh, brilliant. And like, I feel like time travel can be so timey-wimey, wishy-washy in like movies and TV and stuff like that, but like everything about that I absolutely loved. I was like, this is amazing.
Oh yeah,
so much fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah, I think definitely he's been the best. He's been, like you said, he steals the show in every scene that he's in. So I think he's been my favorite part of season 2 for sure. But yeah, so we let's see. Just go back to my plot page here. So we get Brad, end up making him try to talk to figure out what's going on. We get villain Loki. Not quite, like, he didn't go to the length of actually hurting Brad, but like you kind of thought he might have if Brad didn't just immediately talk. Brad's so sure that Loki isn't going to do anything that he just, when he actually does start doing something, he's like, oh, okay, fine. I'll tell you everything. But Brad, I think I know what you're talking about though, because like going from, is it X5 is Brad's name?
Yes.
Like, he's like a nobody character. They mention him in that first episode and like he shows up and he's just kind of there in the background, and then all of a sudden he's like a main character in episode 2 and you're like, oh, okay, not sure where that came from,
right?
but
like that's what tied into kind of that confusion part of it. Like it just seemed some of that disjointedness between those 2 episodes, because you're like, wait a second, he's suddenly the focus now, and they're suddenly tracking. You're just like, it's kind of just that movie type stuff that you're just like, all right, you're kind of confused for 15 minutes, but then they kind of like reestablish the plot and the story, and you're back in. It's fine, whatever.
Yeah,
but like that
for those gloss over it,
right? For those 15 minutes, you're like, and then of course with the nature of the show, you're like, is that done on purpose, and we're gonna get something revealed later on that was intentional, or was this just like a rough patch in the writing?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it'll come back to, be important later on, but it did seem like a little odd detour for sure. And another thing that I'm like kind of getting odd vibes of is B-15. Like, I'm not really sure how she flipped so hard from being like a high ranking, person that's pruning anybody and everybody, and then all of a sudden now she's like the savior of the timelines and is like crying when timelines are getting pruned in that episode 2. And I'm like, that seems like a really hard flip.
Right.
From being that person who did not care one bit at all and was doing her job because she almost seemed like she liked doing it, to
suddenly those are people. Like,
yeah,
like,
those are people.
what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, that was a kind of interesting flip too. And I'm not sure, like, I've heard some people say like they don't trust her and they don't think she's fully on board and she might have still her own like motivations. I don't know if I'm to that point. Like, it just seems like they really want her to be a good guy for some reason. So
Well, that's what just makes it weird with the whole show, because it's like you could say that with anyone.
that's true.
Like with
Yeah.
all the time, like there's another deep cut theory that I saw someone saying online of just to throw it off that the OB is the ultimate bad guy of this season.
Oh my gosh! If you
Like,
made it flip
right,
as a
right.
bad guy,
Like, could you
okay.
like
I honestly
like,
wouldn't hate that though. So
right? You're just like, okay, but you're just like, you're at the point you're like, you don't really have anything to refute it,
yeah,
because you
right,
don't know. Like, it could
right.
go anywhere with any of these characters.
Yeah. At this point, it's so early to tell. And do we have only 6 episodes this season again? Let me just check
I
that
think
out here.
so. Or did they bump this to 8 too?
Let's find out. It says 12. Oh, it says 2 seasons though. So yeah, it says there's only 6 episodes in this season. So yeah, I mean after tonight we'll be halfway through. So, but like it's so hard to know. Like with these Marvel shows, they've been cramming so much in them that like you get to episode 5 and you're like, how the heck are they going to wrap this all up? So like even being halfway through the season, we might have zero inkling to how this season is going to end. So, so we'll find out. Ooh, okay. Minor note here, Zane. I'm looking at the episode slate on IMDb. There's been some reviews coming through for season 2, episode 3, and as of right now, 8:50 p.m. Central Time, the episode just aired like 50 minutes ago. Started airing, and season 2, episode 3 has a rating of 9.7 on IMDb out of 91 ratings. So that's still like, it's still very low ratings, but 9.7 so far. This might be a banger of an episode. Yeah. So we'll find out. But yeah, Zane and I are probably going to go watch that and Gen V like right after this, getting done recording this episode. So, but yeah, a lot of amazing things to look forward to in Loki. What would you rate, episode 1 and episode 2? Go ahead and do them. You can just go do them separately, but like one right after the other.
I'm gonna give episode 1 a 6 out of 6, just because it still kept me engaged. It didn't take like long to pick up the pace from the season finale. Like, it got everything going, got you up to speed, did everything it needed to do, reestablished stuff, and it was just like, it's still that fun. It captured the mystery of like, hey, you got all these timelines, what's going on? Loki's time skipping, you got great animations on stuff. So I'll give that a 6 out of 6. Yeah. Episode 2, though, we're gonna pull that back. It really just, because of the disjointedness on the front, it really threw me for a loop. So I'm gonna go to like a 4.5 for episode 2. Like I said, the back half of that episode is fine. Like, it's way better. It's just that front part, like I said, it feels like it just didn't match well with how episode 1 ended going into episode 2.
Right. Yeah.
Really, I'm going to give it a knock on that, because that front part, I felt like that should have been done better.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what you're saying about episode 1 for sure. 6 out of 6. That intro of OB is legendary. That scene, definitely going to be one of my favorite scenes in Marvel TV, especially moving forward. So that one's a 6 out of 6. I think I'm a little bit higher on that one. I'll give it a 5 out of 6. It's definitely not perfect, and I do think you are onto something. It was a little distracting, but I want to give it a little bit of grace, because I feel like it was a decent episode, and because I feel like now that I've rewatched the season 1, I feel like they do have a plan. So I'm gonna just trust that the writers they did that for a reason. I'm not sure yet. we'll come back to this after the season is over, and
That's
maybe I'll
fair.
change that. Who knows? But so far, it didn't bug me enough to really drop it down any further. So 5 out of 6 on that one. Definitely was still like a fun Loki episode. Nothing like too crazy bonkers going on. So 5 out of 6 for me. But yeah, definitely lots of cool stuff. Looking forward to. Stay tuned. We are going to be reviewing Loki as long as it comes out here. So next week, we're going to be reviewing probably episodes 3 and 4. And then, maybe we'll see. I don't know. Depends on what time we record next week. And then we'll potentially go episode by episode after that. So, but yeah, stay tuned for more Loki reviews. You ready to get into Ahsoka, Zane?
Absolutely.
All right. Ahsoka finally getting around to reviewing the finale episode and kind of give a little brief season recap here. But I mean, Zane and I have been singing the show's praises for the whole season. Like it's a phenomenal season of television. We'll get into our actual ratings after a while here, but episode 8, just getting the info up here. Episode 8, The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. Kind of a nice little play on
nod to C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, yeah, exactly. We finally get the kind of the final confrontation, final battle between Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka coming up to try to stop Thrawn. I guess we'll give an official spoiler warning again here. If you had listened to Loki, hadn't listened to this one, make sure you have watched the last episode of Ahsoka before listening to this. So here we go. Unsuccessfully. That's what I was going to say. That was a spoiler. They don't stop Thrawn from to the main universe. Right. So what I've said this whole season is that Thrawn at the very end of the episode is going to come back to the main universe, which he does. But we did have some quite interesting developments in this episode. So we finally get confirmation of the Night Troopers. There's still some wishy-washy stuff going on here. So, okay, we get the Night Troopers resurrecting as zombies. To me, it was not really clear if they were zombies prior to being resurrected. They seemed like they were normal troopers. What do you think about that, Zane? Do you think they were troopers before, like normal dudes that got resurrected by the Night Mothers? Or do you think they were already zombies and they're just resurrecting them again?
I mean, it seemed way more like they were actual troopers already. But I think that's also kind of the point that, like, I mean, it's that dark magic. Like, they could have been, but, like, I think they kind of did enough to differentiate that, like, you could tell when it was a zombie compared to not. And so I think I would have to lean towards them being, like, they were troopers, and then, yeah, they all got reanimated. Because then they were very much
with
zombies.
You on that too, because like then when they come up to the like big like platform or whatever, and they have that kind of final showdown with the Death Troopers. The Death Troopers are definitely zombies.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
they blow their helmets off, and it's a zombie. Yep. So that was cool. I like that they did that. They showed the zombie face, but that means part of his army is definitely already zombies,
right?
But they made such a big deal of resurrecting the Night Troopers that went down there that it makes me think that those guys were actual real troopers. Like, why would you make a big deal of resurrecting guys that were already zombies? I just that wouldn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, but either way, I guess that's the whole point of that magic. Because it's like, whether they're alive or already zombies, the whole point is that you can keep resurrecting them. Like, you have an army that, in essence, can't be completely killed because you can just keep resurrecting them.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, but that was cool that we finally got confirmation of zombie troopers. We have zombies in Star Wars.
Yeah, right. It's awesome.
It's awesome. I don't know. I've been hearing some people complain about like the Night Sister storyline being such a big part of this season, even though it really hasn't been explained or brought up in live action before. But I think I don't know. It is hard because like this whole season has been like a lot of just going and expecting you to know who these
Right.
people are and like their backgrounds and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess if you've never watched the animated shows, you haven't seen a whole lot. Like if you haven't played the games, you haven't played like Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, you might not know anything about these, and that might weird you out. But either way, zombies in Star Wars is still pretty cool. So
Right.
I'm okay with it.
Right, exactly. Like you got this big, huge universe of all this stuff. Like, yeah, why can't it have zombies? Now, granted, yeah, it's not your classic zombie. Yeah, they're being resurrected by man, but it's just still like,
Mhm.
why not? Like,
Yeah.
combine it. Like, it's what we're here for, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that part was really cool. No complaints about zombie troopers. I liked how they changed too from like looking like normal troopers to when they got resurrected, they had like that green glow in their
They had the
eyes.
green
They're just like
glow. They had like the
doing the
zombie shuffle, right?
shuffle. Yeah,
It was, yeah,
that
that
was
was cool.
awesome. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of really cool things. Cool final showdown. I felt like and then actually early in this episode, I think the Night Mothers basically make what's her face a true Night Sister. Is that kind of what you got the vibes of, or like it's weird because like they're translating different into live action than they look in animated. So I'm still a little fuzzy on like the exact details. Morgan Elsbeth, that's who it's
Yes, yes.
but like so the Night Mothers have this like kind of like dark makeup on their eyes. It's like kind of ill-defined like shadows on their face, whereas like you look at the Night Sisters in animation, they have very defined like tattoos and like markings on their face. So they're different, and they call them Night Mothers like in this because they're
Right.
powerful, like supposedly descendants or stuff of this race, right? So that makes sense. But it seems like they make Morgan a Night Mother because they give her the same markings that they have, which to me is like, she's just this, like, she barely even has Night Sister powers, but they're just giving her full Night Mother powers now. I don't know. That part felt a little weird to me. Like, I don't know. And it is because it's not been seen in live action before. I wonder if that's why they did it that way, just to like, for continuity's sake. Like, hey,
Right.
they're Night Mothers, now they're making her like her. Like,
Right.
that makes sense to me. But at the same time, being a nerd animated like Star Wars fan that's watched those shows, I was like, what's going on? Makes me want to pick apart some of that stuff. But
Right. Well, I suppose part of that too is just like they kind of had to. I guess I kind of take that they kind of had to make her like them because I felt like that's also what gave her access to like control the army.
True.
To resurrect because like they did the ritual to like resurrect, but like I feel like she needed that because obviously that whole final fight's going on and stuff and all that's happening. Clearly, Morgan Elsbeth is controlling all of them.
Yeah.
So right. I think that's what part of that was, to be like, hey, you're not in our club to control all the zombie troopers. Let's make you part of the club. But at the same time,
now.
Right, even with all the Night Sister stuff, like, you know, we got like glimpses of that. Because I mean, even from like in Clone Wars, like Mother Talzin wasn't the mother. Like you go back in some of the other episodes, like she was just a regular Night Sister,
right?
And then went through all the stuff to become.
That's what I was gonna say. That like these Night Mothers supposedly seem to be either originators or like descendants or ancestors, I should say, not descendants, of the Night Sisters that we know in the current universe. So I don't know. We don't know how time works between these galaxies and stuff like that. Like maybe, you know, when all of the Night Sisters emigrated to the main Star Wars universe and to Dathomir, maybe over the years they've like changed and like adapted,
Right.
to whatever their environment and like whatever they've got going on too. So it could just be that like the Night Mothers are just Night Sisters, and obviously they're probably more powerful than the average Night Sister because they're kind of the originators of their
Right.
race or whatever. But they might not be so much different. It's just they're in a different galaxy. They might be different. Who knows? So yeah, I don't know. That part was I just noticed that and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But you mentioned Mother Talzin. She gets the Blade of Talzin, which is kind of a cool callback to. That's Clone Wars, right? Or is that Rebels? Yeah, that's Clone Wars.
That's Clone Wars.
Is there Night Sister stuff in Rebels at all? I'm like trying to remember if that's a callback at all, but I don't recall.
I don't think it's in Rebels because I feel like
most of it's in Clone Wars for sure.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the whole kind of the Night Sister stuff is kind of wrapped up by the time you get into Rebels.
Yeah, right.
Because like Mother Talzin isn't around anymore.
Yep.
But I suppose there's the Night Sisters and everything still on Dathomir. I guess they just didn't have a mother anymore.
Yeah. So here's another question. How did the Blade of Talzin get to the other galaxy with the Night Mothers there? That's a question for me.
Dark magic.
yeah, there you go. I mean,
well, at the same time, dude, like that's exactly how Mother Talzin made the weapon she gives Savage Opress in the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
it just materializes it out of the dark magic. So it's just like it's not necessarily that it's like, oh, this is some sort of pocket dimension. like,
right? Yeah,
it could just legit like they're using magic to create it, and like. And since this is the first that's come into live action, it could just be that the nerdy reference, the whole Talzin reference, but like maybe that blade is just they just call those
maybe it's just accessible for Night Sisters or whatever, or if you've been gifted it, that it's accessible for you or whatever,
or it's a known thing that just it just got named after her. So you know what I mean, like
right. Real ticky tack, but like still so cool that they're making all these references and I was all for it, and it was a sweet like battle between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth again. So I will say though, I think overall Rosario Dawson, like I think she did a great job as Ahsoka, like live action personification, about as close as you could come to what we would imagine an older Ahsoka being. But I will say I do think a lot of her lightsaber movements seem pretty stiff to me. Like choreography was pretty good. Really liked that whole fight scene and all of the fight scenes that she's been a part of. She does a really good job of doing what she's learned and doing what she's told to do. I just feel like you go back and you watch those prequel like lightsaber fights, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are so fluid in like what they're doing. Like they're just they look like they've been doing it their whole lives. And Rosario, I feel like didn't really look like that. Another ticky tack thing because the fight was still really cool. But I saw some people on Twitter saying like this is the best fight ever in Star Wars, and I was like, I wouldn't go that far. It was cool.
It was very well done, but I think that's part of it. Like. I mean, also like she's fighting with two blades instead of one. Yeah,
that's true, and like
that takes a lot more coordination. And I suppose you're looking at Rosario Dawson. She's in her 40s.
She's got to be 50 by now,
or dang near 50. Whereas back when they did those prequels, Hayden Christensen was 20s, and they're probably 20s, both of them. Yeah, maybe one was early 20s, one was late 20s. So, like, you're going to get way more athleticism when someoone's younger. You know what I mean?
She's only 44. I was thinking she was, like, almost 50. Dang. Okay.
So, I mean, that's a far cry. If, even still, if they're mid-20s, that's 20
I get what you're
years,
saying, because you go back to that Obi-Wan fight between Vader and Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show.
Right.
Like, the lightsaber fight itself is not really impressive. The awesome part about that fight is like the colors from the lightsaber on that on that like kind of gray background.
Mm-hmm.
You see Hayden Christensen's face in the Darth Vader mask. Like, it's the emotional part of that fight
Right.
that makes that fight so good. It's not necessarily like the amazing lightsaber duel, type stuff. So I think there's an element of that to this too, because it's personal for both of them, because they've both, already fought each other, and kind of been facing off this whole time. So you definitely feel the emotion with Rosario Dawson. That's what I'll say. I definitely appreciate the job that she's done as Ahsoka. So, but yeah, pretty cool showdown. This is another really ticky-tack thing, Zane, but I feel like Star Wars has gotten soft in how they kill people. Like, I feel like every execution we've gotten by lightsaber in these Disney Plus shows is just a slash across the chest. Like, come on, behead somebody. Like, give me something.
I mean, true. I mean, we technically did get a beheading. It was behind that pillar, but like that also increases the rating.
That's true.
Of the TV.
I'm fine with it. I don't care.
Well, right, but like if they're going for other audiences, or if they have certain criteria they're trying to hit, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
if they're trying to hit certain benchmarks, yeah, there's going to be some things that they can't include.
Right. Yeah, and they can't. Like, I mean, Star Wars has never shown blood though, too. Like, it's never like, even with the lightsaber deaths and stuff like that.
Especially the whole thing that is centered around the family friendly, and like you can't have this, but then also of all the canon stuff, you can't have them like chopping off limbs and heads, and then at the same time you have
they've got that in Star Wars though. That's the thing. They don't show it on screen. What they do is they show them starting it, and then you just hear it cuts, you hear a big whoosh, and then you see the limb fall on the floor. Like, I think it's A New Hope when it's either A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, or maybe even one of the original trilogy movies where that like bar patron dude like comes up and messes with, I think it's Obi-Wan. Yeah, so it must be A New Hope. And Obi-Wan just like slices his hand off, and the hand like falls on the floor. But you see the decapitated hand on the floor.
That was also the 70s. Like,
yeah. So, well, in episode 2, Dooku gets beheaded, and you see his head roll on the floor.
That was the early 2000s.
Okay. All right. This is the 2020s. Come on, man. Let's go. But anyways, that's another ticky-tack thing. It does not change my rating at all. But like, come on. I want to see some like grody executions. But yeah, you're totally right, though. It probably does raise the rating, and they can't call it family friendly anymore. But like Anakin beheading Dooku with 2 lightsabers, like that was sweet. Come on. That was awesome. That's like my favorite part of. Is it Attack of the Clones, or is that Revenge of the Sith? That's Revenge of the Sith, because Attack of the Clones, he gets beat by Dooku.
Yeah,
that's an amazing part of Revenge of the Sith. So I don't know. Again, I've got a lot of little teeny ticky tack things. Nothing that really changes my overall perspective of the show. But as a really, nerdy Star Wars fan, I feel like the little things that I've picked up on. So, but anyway, so we get to, the final showdown. I was going to say Ezra. Sabine finally gets her force powers. What did you think of the development of that? Was that too much to all at once, that she gets her force powers and then all of a sudden she gives the big force push to Ezra to get on the ship? Or were you okay with that?
I was okay, because it was like, I think so. The Star Wars fan base in general, and even like, because what you've been saying, people just love to nitpick and will whine and complain about everything. But I thought it was done well, because even what you had from Rebels, and of course you don't get this unless you watch Rebels, even with Kanan's teaching, as the Force is in everything. Even Kanan said, like in Rebels, like spoiler before he dies, that like Sabine was basically having trouble accessing that because she was so conflicted.
Right. Yeah. And
you see that even throughout this whole entire series. And then some people are like, "Oh my goodness, she could suddenly use her Force powers. That's that's so dumb." But no, she finally has the source of the conflict isn't there anymore. She's
Right.
finally back with Ezra. It's setting all this stuff right. Like, she can finally have her mind clear to that. She didn't leave Ahsoka to run off. She came back. Like, she's clear mind. Like,
Right.
that's kind of what she doesn't have. That's
Your
the
mind, full hearts
symbolization.
can't lose, you know?
Right, exactly. She doesn't have that conflict anymore. And then for me, on the Force push one, like, number one, it it wasn't enough. Like, Ezra definitely, so like, you're already like, it wasn't like a perfect thing.
Right.
But also, like, I figure, like, if someone's beginning on a Force power, it's gonna be Force push because you don't
Right.
have to finesse it. You
Well,
just
every
you just-
single Star Wars game, that's the first Force
Right,
power
it's
you get.
it's the
Force
first you
push.
get.
Like, that's the
Right.
first one. So
Because
yeah,
there's
that
no
totally-
finesse. You just yeet. Right. You just yeet. So it's just like,
yeah.
that's
exactly.
why for me it was just like, it actually makes sense. Like, it's not like
Mm.
oh, Sabine, I need you to like hold me in place
Yeah.
while I do. Like, no, it's just push. Like, that's
think-
it.
The only complaint, not even a complaint, the only thing I'd say about that is I wish they would have like teased her Force powers like maybe in an episode or two before that, just like little tiny movements, like the lightsaber initially, when she was like gonna grab it, when it started like just like flickering or whatever. I wish we could have gotten maybe a taste of that or two in a couple other episodes.
See,
not enough to move anything, not enough to like, she's still frustrated because she can't use her Force powers, but I feel like that would have made it a little bit more.
I guess I'm
believable
on the opposite end of that. I think it was well done for what it was, because I think if she was able to wiggle it or the little bit, I think that would have been less of a focus on the conflict she was going through. Because the show's Ahsoka and it's following that, but as much of it's Ahsoka, it's also Sabine,
right?
And
I mean,
her
they
journey and
made
everything
it very
she's
clear
on.
that she was also like, she was also one of the main characters being developed in this show, so.
Right? And like, I feel like it would be somewhat disingenuous on that, because like, even like before they got to Peridia and with Ezra and everything, it's just like Hu Yang's there, and like, you're the worst Jedi candidate I've ever seen. It's just like, everything was against her, adding to that conflict, adding to that negativity. I felt like it kind of would have been somewhat of a betrayal if she could all of a sudden wiggle. So, she had everything going against her, and then finally stuff was starting to go right when she gets back with Ezra, when all that started going on, and she finally gets to that point where she can start letting stuff go. Because I think, and so I think it had more of an impact that way.
Okay. Here's one thing that I thought prior to the finale episode that I would have been okay with. I think, I don't know if it would have been a better path for her, because ultimately I like where she's at. Like, I think the finale was a good ending, but before the finale I was like, man, what if she just gave up on being a Jedi completely and just accepted herself for who she is, a badass Mandalorian who can get things done without the Force? What if she just gave up on all that and was like, you know what? I'm fine with being who I actually am. And I was like, if they did that, I wouldn't be mad. I think that would be a good, and I think that would be true to her character too. But I think what she did was also true to her character. And I'm fine with how it ended. But that was one thought I had before. I was like, I mean, if the resolution went the other way, instead of going to be a Jedi, but she still got that character development, she still is good with where she's at, you're almost in the same place, obviously in different sides of the spectrum with her being a Jedi and not being a Jedi. But I was like, oh, you know what? I think I'd be okay with that. But it ended pretty well. She made like you said, the decision to stay behind and help Ahsoka. Ahsoka and Sabine get stuck on Peridia. So what do you think is going to happen with that? Do they even get back to the main universe? Because obviously we know sequel trilogy, they don't seem to be around, which is also years down the road. So who knows what happens in between there. But do you think we get them coming back to the main universe to face down Thrawn for some, like maybe the Filoni movie or something like that?
I think so. Like, it's got to be all that sets up for the movie, because it's just like, even with the sequel, like, we don't see anything with Thrawn either. So it only makes sense that Thrawn gets taken out, and it has to be from Ahsoka, Ezra. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the characters for the self-contained story. It's split up, but like they all come back together somehow. And like I think that's what ends up tying into everything that Bale and Skull's off doing. That's going to be obviously the key to how they all get back.
Yeah,
into the
definitely,
main universe.
That was
and
that was the most sore ending I've had of a show for a long time. Like watching Balin finally go like head towards his destiny, and then knowing that we're not getting Ray Stevenson back as Balin Skull again. Oh, that was so sad. But I love the character of Balin Skull, so I do hope they go ahead and like recast, somebody else that, I mean, it's going to be tough for them to live up to Ray Stevenson's portrayal as Balin Skull, because he's legendary in this series, man. Every episode, me and you both were like, Balin Skull, he's so mysterious and intriguing, and he was like the main thing in this whole series that we were focused on, I feel like. So the fact that we get him at the end heading towards potentially what you mentioned in episode 180 of the Infinity Bros podcast, Abeloth, right? Is that the Abeloth? I think is what it's the name of it is. So we get Balin Skull standing on epic. Oh my gosh, it was so cool when they panned up and it was like the Lord of the Rings giant statues,
right?
And he's okay. I was in awe of this whole epic scene. But when I saw him standing on the finger, I was like, why are you on the finger? Like, why are you way out there? You're just going to have to go back and climb down the mountain.
Walk all the way back around.
You're going to walk all the way back, man. Why are you standing way out there? But even so, like, I don't even care, because that was an awesome way to end that.
It was a very epic shot.
It was such a cool shot. But so he's looking towards what, it's got the father, the son, and the daughter, which, was cool that like the daughter statue was like smashed up. Like it was, you could tell this is well worn. This is the Star Wars stuff that I'm like, yes. Oh, I want to know more, because this is all legendary stuff from, that we learn about in Clone Wars. This is in another galaxy. Before this series, we were like, oh, is the Force even going to work in the other galaxy? Like, we don't know how that's going to work. Like, these Force, like, Jedi legends are true in this other galaxy. Like, this is so cool. I love that we're getting confirmation of this kind of stuff. As a Star Wars fan, what a time to be alive.
Oh, right.
Just so much fun. I'm going to let you take it from here, because you were the one that were like, this could be Abeloth. So that's the theory. If you want to know more about Abeloth, we won't spend a whole lot of time on it now. Go back to episode 180 of the Infinity Bros podcast and learn a little bit more about that. But I mean, nothing that we said in that episode really can be disproven.
Right.
Like, everything still holds. So what are your thoughts moving forward with Balin Skull and what he has in store?
Well, that's the tough one, because you're just like, they didn't really give enough to make a solid basis on anything there. But they gave just enough to be like, hey, I think, you're getting into this, because you're like, because even you go back and you watch those episodes from Clone Wars, and the whole point was that the father had Anakin to come there because he didn't want to be the balance of the Force anymore between the son and the daughter. And so the whole point was to have Anakin kill him, and then the Anakin would become the balance. So then there's all this like speculation on stuff that how the roles flipped, because then obviously if you haven't watched those episodes, they end up fighting, and then the son tries to basically overthrow the father, kills the sister, and then Anakin ends up using the dagger of the gods, or the dagger of the ones, or whatever the dagger's called. Kills the father, because then when the father dies, the father or the son and daughter also die, because they're all connected, because he's the balance. So then they all disappear. But before the daughter dies, like, she puts like her essence to resurrect Ahsoka. And then even after she dies, she takes the form of an owl.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see at the end of Ahsoka that flies, that Ahsoka sees before she goes to overlook it's that owl. And I believe the owl's name's like Morai.
Yeah.
And that's what people speculate. Well, that's like the essence of what the daughter was. And so there's a lot of the speculation that that's kind of how the new setup's supposed to be, is in a way, Anakin did become that balance. And now Ahsoka is going to be the representative of, she's the new daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And even the whole thing of the white robes, the she's
right.
kind of that new representative of the daughter. And so now people are like, well, so then is Balin's skull supposed to be the representation of the sun? Is that how the Force rebalances?
Right.
Like, or, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to go with from there.
It's this is all complete wild speculation from us, as you are well aware of hearing on the Infinity Bros podcast. But the one thing about that theory to me is like, the only way Balin fits into that sun role is if like they're literally waiting for somebody to come and take that role, right? Because like Balin doesn't have any connection necessarily with Anakin or Ahsoka, but I mean, in theory, who else is going to fill that role?
Shin?
Maybe, possibly.
I mean, because I guess when you look at that is like, she was way more obsessed with like the power and everything, and Balin was like, "Hey, calm down." And and obviously she's still there with. I mean, she's not with Balin because she went and like joined back up with those Raiders, but like Ahsoka and Sabine are there, and so are Balin and Shin.
Yeah, right.
And so like, maybe
they're all maybe gonna get back together the same way.
Right. Well, I think that's the other part of it, because like, I don't think are they all aware that they're still there?
Right.
I would assume maybe Ahsoka and Sabine know they're there, but I doubt Balin and Shin know they're still there. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting because they made it seem like Shin still has a part to play.
Right.
Like, Balin kind of releases her and sets her off on her own in, I think it's episode 7. Episode 8, all they have is her showing up to the bandits, so she joins up with the bandits. But they still showed that scene in anticipation, I'm assuming, of her continuing as a pretty significant character in this either Ahsoka episode or season 2, or potentially moving into the Filoni movie. But just I don't know how that all is going to work out. Really intrigued. That still is the storyline that I'm like most in on this whole show. The Balin Shin hottie. I don't know what's going on with it, but I'm intrigued.
I mean, at the same time too, you look at it, you're just like, I guess it's the decent job of what you say of like, they left it open ended. You're just like, you're not closing their story, so there's definitely more you can do with the character. But at the same time, you ended it enough that you're like, where the character is. Yeah. That it's just like, it's like, even it wouldn't take much exposition to get that character back into a timeline somewhere. Yeah. Like they just, it was well set up. It might not have been the most satisfying of what's going on, but it's well set up that they can be brought up to speed in I'm assuming the Filoni's movie.
Yeah. Right. And that's, Filoni's movie's got to be the resolution to all this, because they have not confirmed Ahsoka season 2, but there's been so many people talking about it that I would be shocked if it doesn't happen. Because I don't think you could really wrap up all these storylines that they've started, and plus the Mandalorian and like all the stuff going on with all the other shows. I don't think you can wrap them up in one movie. Like, there's got to be a little bit more resolution before you get one big bang movie that can resolve everything. So, I don't know, man. I'm assuming there's going to be a Ahsoka season 2. But, okay. Moment of truth, Zane. Season 1. What did you think of the finale? Rate the finale. And what did you think of the season as a whole? And rate that as well.
The finale... I'm going to give the finale a 5.5. I think the finale is solid 5.5. And then I can look at it and say some of it's the nostalgia glasses. But I also think coming from watching Clone Wars and watching Rebels, it definitely has a much larger impact when you watch Ahsoka.
Agreed.
And from that lens and knowing that and seeing that story all play out and how that all connected, like I cannot give this show a 6 out of 6. Like, and I know Filoni said that too. Like, hey, this is Rebels season 5, and because that's live action. That is a Rebels season 5, but like it didn't miss that story. You can go from Clone Wars to Rebels to Ahsoka, and it's still a complete thread.
Yeah,
like you're still getting all of it, and I think
right.
that's very good storytelling when you can do that. When you can
I
switch
mentioned
mediums.
on a few different episodes of the Infinity Bros podcast as well. If you showed me the script, I could absolutely see it as an animated season. Like,
right.
Like I would have no question believing that this is an animated show if you just showed me the script. You know, like,
oh yeah,
it played out like an animated show. So yeah, it was Rebels season 5, and I loved it for that. But I am on the same exact page as you, Zane. I think this finale was good. It was fun. It wrapped up the storylines enough to be satisfying, but then also left us excited for more. But I don't think it necessarily was like the best episode of this season. Like 5 and 6 to me still were just so stinking good. Like I can go
right.
back and watch those episodes out of this whole season for sure. But I'd give this one a 5 out of 6. And the show as a whole, same as you. I just like, I don't know if I can in good conscience give this a 6 out of 6, just knowing that there's people out there watching this show confused about like what the heck is happening with these characters. And it again, it was a great show. I think it was a show that did not blow my socks off though. So I'm giving a 5.5 out of 6. My little teaser for this next segment is it is not my favorite Disney Plus Star Wars show. So with that, Zane, we're going to do a quick top 5.
We're going in 3. You're entering the top 5 on the Infinity Bros podcast. Starting now.
So, with Ahsoka coming out, we now have 5 live-action Disney Plus shows. Zane and I are going to cap off this episode by ranking these shows in order of worst to best. I mean, worst, I put in quotations because Zane and I probably have our worst show at like a 5 or 5.5 or something like that. So, because we're just big Star Wars shills. So, but anyways, so bottom to top, Zane. Should we go back and forth or just list off the whole list? What do you want to do?
I mean, either works.
Back and forth. I feel like our lists are going to be pretty similar. So let's go.
I was going to say, I feel like it's probably similar.
Okay. Number 5 here. Mine is Book of Boba Fett. I'm assuming that's what yours is too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Book of Boba
so
Fett.
I think I rated that one a 4.5 out of 6. It was still really fun. It had a lot of fun things in it.
It's fun. The last 3 episodes are leagues better than the first 3. So
Amen.
if you're watching Book of Boba Fett, maybe just skip to the last 3 episodes. You're not really missing much in the first 3. But
and the last 3 episodes honestly play as like a Mandalorian season 2.5.
Right. They're just so much fun.
Like, yeah, they're a lot of fun. They do a lot of fun things that I know you in our review compared Book of Boba Fett, that last episode where Boba Fett is riding the Rancor. It felt a lot like a monster movie, you know?
Right. It's just cool. Like,
yeah, it's just fun. They did some fun stuff. It was just not a very cohesive show as a whole.
Right.
Is what it comes down
to me on that, like we said, like, oh my goodness, we have zombies in Star Wars. Like, we zombies too, but it's just like, as your kid, what's the coolest thing is you're playing with your Star Wars toys. I'm going to have this guy ride on the Rancor and you're going to fight. And you're just like, It just felt like you kids grabbing toys out of toy box. And you're like, it's crazy. It's wild. Give me that. That's what I want to see in Star Wars.
Yep, I agree. So number 5, both of us is Book of Boba Fett. Number 4, drumroll. What is yours? Number 4? You can go first this time.
My number 4 is Kenobi.
Same. Are we gonna have this? I think we might have a different 1 and 2 though. We'll find out. But my same is Kenobi. I love this show because I love Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's my favorite Star Wars character of all time, and I am just so jazzed that we got him back as Obi-Wan for this show. But there were a lot of weird things about this show. Most notably, they had and young Leia was fantastic, but they did some weird things. They had that weird chase scene with the bandits, and they made it this big deal, and it was why are we watching this 8-year-old run away from a bunch of adults? This is weird.
Right.
And I feel like that was another show that maybe didn't flow quite as well as other shows, but Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor and Obi-Wan Kenobi, chef's kiss. It was so fun to see them together.
100%.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add on Kenobi?
Well, I think Kenobi is the epitome of that show. That there's the show itself was forgettable, but it had very awesome moments. Those are the moments you're going to want to go and rewatch.
Right.
That final fight, like you kind of talked earlier, the gray setting, but you got the light of the lightsabers. That fight as they're throwing boulders at awesome fight.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Right.
I'm just thinking about it.
Right. Just
so
watching
good.
Just watching that alone, or even earlier when the rebels go to escape and Vader walks in and he just grabs the shuttle with the Force. That is a sweet Star Wars moment. Yeah. That's what it has those sweet moments, but the series in general, for the most of it, you're just it's just forgettable. You're just but it has the really cool moments.
Right. Yep. Totally with you right there. All right. Number 3. My number 3 is, maybe this is where we start to differ. I don't know. We'll find out. My number 3 is actually Ahsoka.
Oh, no, this is where we're different.
Okay, all right, we're different. Loved it. We've already talked about it a lot. I think Ahsoka was fantastic, really fun. I can't put it above these, and I'm pretty sure I know what your number 3 is because I don't think you liked it as much as I did. So go for it.
Oh yeah, my number 3 is Andor.
That's
it's the only way because it's the only 2 we have that are flipped on. It's just great show, super fun. It's fun to see the other stuff going on in the Star Wars universe, but at the same time, you're just it was well done for what it was, but at the same time, that's not it didn't scream Star Wars to me. Good show, good content, great acting, but you could set that in any universe for that show and it would still be a good show.
Right.
I just felt it didn't have the big things that you're hey, this is Star Wars. Right. It just didn't really have that. It had its own epic moments, but it didn't have the Star Wars moments or as the amount of Star Wars moments you'd want.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Number 2, you go ahead with your number 2, Zane.
My number 2 is Ahsoka.
Okay.
I said, I feel that's where the flip was.
Right.
Like I said, maybe part of that's nostalgia, but I just seeing the whole story, like I said, what you got from Clone Wars and through everything with Rebels, it's one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best spun stories we have in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And just the continuation, and it was just fun. Like I said, it's like watching Rebels season 5, and it's fun.
It's a lot of fun.
To kind of counter everything that I said with Andor, everything with Ahsoka, so much is this is Star Wars.
This is Star Wars.
Right. This is Star Wars. This is what you're watching it for, and that's what it gave me. And so I'm that's why, for me, it's number 2.
Agreed. Yep. My number 2, I'm actually going to shock you, Zane. My number 2 is The Mandalorian.
Oh.
Yeah. I absolutely love this show. And this is splitting hairs big time because The Mandalorian could very easily be number 1 in my book as well. I feel like season 3 is the reason why I have it number 2 right now. Still super enjoyable, still loved it, but I don't think season 3 was on par with season 2 and season 1. It was just a slight decrease in interest to me for that season. I think they did a great job of wrapping everything up and still would rank season 3 probably higher than a lot of seasons of Star Wars TV. But The Mandalorian is my number 2, which I've at least put Andor at number 1, and your number 1 is The Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, yeah.
So yeah, what number 1 Mandalorian? You said Ahsoka was number 2. I mean, that's a pretty significant difference, I feel like, between Ahsoka and The Mandalorian for you. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, Mandalorian kind of just still takes it with the bullet. Like, it's still the number 1. Like, it's not super close for 1 and 2, but yeah, it's definitely number 1 for Mandalorian.
Yeah. So to me, I put Andor number 1 because of the reason you mentioned. Actually, this is such a good show that if you know nothing about Star Wars, you could still like this show. Like, I think it's that good that almost anybody could watch this and enjoy it. And I think the one thing that proved that to me is that Max's dad watched this and loved it. And I was like, if Steve likes this,
right,
then literally anybody can like this show. So, but yeah, I think Andor was fantastic. I do agree. It didn't give you those big Star Wars moments, but it had its own moments that, man, I just think back to that one episode where you had the monologue from Andy Serkis, and then like 5 minutes later, you had the monologue from what's his name? Stellan Skarsgård?
Stellan
Yeah.
Skarsgård, I think.
Stellan,
yeah.
I think, yeah. But both of those were so good. And the whole show in itself was just phenomenal. As of right now, that's my number 1. But like I said, Mandalorian and Andor they're right on the same tier for me. They're so stinking good. So that is our top 5. If you guys have any differences in your top 5, let us know. Hit us up on theinfinitybros.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all the things.
All of it.
Zane, thank you so much for hanging out with me, man.
Yeah, it's always a fun time,
Always
wouldn't miss it.
Stay tuned for Loki reviews from the Infinity Bros podcast coming up. Very excited to be coming at you guys at multiple different angles with Loki and Gen V probably coming up too. So thanks a lot for hanging out with us. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast experience. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. Hey, you can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and that sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.